This week on the Deep Leadership Podcast.
You got to be taking care of each other and looking out for each other. And that's where really you see organizations begin to shine. It's when those relationships are healthy and they're productive and people just enjoy working together.
This episode is brought to you by the Salty Sailor Coffee Company, the official coffee of the Deep Leadership Podcast. Salty Sailor is a veteran-owned coffee brand on a mission to deliver premium, fresh roasted coffee while making a positive impact in the world. Their motto is drink coffee and do good, which reflects their commitment to making amazing coffee and actively supporting the military community. 10% of every order goes to the Navy Marine Corps Relief Society, an organization dedicated to helping sailors, Marines, and their families in times of need. All our listeners get 10% off every order of their amazing coffee by using the discount code DEEP at checkout. So check them out at saltysailorcoffee.com. Welcome to the Deep Leadership Podcast. Today I'm joined by Dr. Randy Ross. Randy is a compelling communicator, craftsman of culture, and best-selling author of multiple books, including Remarkable, Road to Remarkable, Relationomics, Fireproof Happiness, and his latest book entitled Make Life Good. He has worked with brands like Delta, Berkshire Hathaway, GE, McDonald's, Panasonic, Chick-fil-A, and others to inspire and enable countless people to find new passion and purpose in their work better together in teams, and have greater influence and impact. He believes that when people like what they do it better. And when people like those they do it with, then they work better together. And I'm excited to have him on the show to talk more about building a remarkable culture. So, Randy, welcome to the show.
Hey, John, it's a pleasure to be with you. And you read that just like we wrote it. So thank you.
Yeah, I've done a few of these episodes, so I'm getting my radio voice. So
There you
thank
go.
you.
There you go.
Well, I wanted to have you on the show. I mean, just all the work that you do and the work that you've done with all these companies. I kind of wanted to get in on culture and talk a little bit about culture and building a great culture. First of all, tell our audience, what is organizational culture? What is it?
Well, right. It's a buzzword right now.
Yeah.
Everybody's talking about culture, and people are beginning to realize the importance of a good culture. Everybody seems to have their own definition, but here's ours. Culture is the collective expression of the values, the beliefs, and the behaviors that individuals bring to any endeavor. And I think all three of those are important because behaviors, obviously, are those things that are observable that we see every day. Is how we play in the sandbox together, right? But behind every behavior is a belief system. And we all have a belief system, those things that we hold to be true, factual, important, impactful. And then behind our belief system, what drives the belief system or is foundational for that is our value construct. What are the values that you hold to be dear? Because ultimately people will do what they believe will bring the greatest value to themselves and to those around them. And so culture is really the codification of those three dimensions: values, beliefs, and behaviors. And the fun part is when you have a dynamic culture that really understands the importance of connecting people's personal passion to corporate objectives, and you create a relationally rich environment in which people can thrive. Now you've got a cutting edge culture, and it becomes the greatest differentiating factor that any organization can possess.
Yeah, that you just said something that's really important, and I think that's something I've learned over the years, which is the connecting people's passion to the overall mission of the company. And when you can do that, when you have people kind of aligned, like this is what I've been put on earth to do, and they're doing in pursuit of an organizational objective, and they're around team members that they respect, and they're also on their own journey, personal journey towards what they want to do in their life. You can't stop a team like that. I mean, they're unstoppable when that happens.
Well, because at that point, they're not just on a mission. They don't just have a mission, they're on mission and they're on mission together.
Yeah.
And that's when things really get dynamic and exciting because if we're all aligned, and we call that value centricity, when people's values are aligned with one another and aligned with the organization, then it creates a circuit literally through which energy can flow to light up the world and do good. And there's nothing more powerful than unity. And when people are unified in their effort, when they're unified in their thought, when they're unified in their values, it's a pretty immovable force. It's exciting. It gets fun.
I love it. I love this. My second book is called All in the Same Boat. It talks about how we built one team as a submarine crew, and that unity that we had was something that I never saw in my corporate days, but I do see it now as an entrepreneur with running a small manufacturing company. I have that again, but I didn't have it in my corporate days. It was always like we were never always aligned. Everybody was sort of running in different directions, and the mission was always a little foggy. And so you work with big companies, and so I'm kind of curious as we get into this, talking a little bit about how you do that on a bigger scale. I've seen it done, like I said, in the military. I've seen it done in small companies, but bigger companies seems like they get lost a little bit, right? In terms of what's the priority, what's the total mission. Everybody has sort of conflicting agendas sometimes. Do you find it that way in big companies where it's a little harder?
Well, it can happen. Certainly, I think organizations that grow rapidly, either through just natural growth or through mergers and acquisitions, it's harder to keep the consistency of the culture. It's hard to make sure that it propagates, from the core outward. But it can be done, and we work with some great organizations who have done a remarkable job at that. Chick-fil-A being one of those.
Yeah.
The culture goes all the way back to Truett Cathy. It was his heart, it was his passion, but it's been brought forward by the different generations now. People think about Chick-fil-A as being an overnight sensation, but it's really not. It started in 1946,
Yep.
and it started off in a little dwarf house. But as it grew, I think that whole idea of taking care of each other and taking care of the customer really permeated the culture, and it always has, and it still does. As a matter of fact, it's kind of interesting. We might want to talk about this a little bit later, but most people don't understand what the mission or the vision statement of Chick-fil-A is. And their current statement is very simple: to be the world's most caring company.
Yeah.
Now, that
And
has
guess
nothing,
what's,
has
yeah,
nothing to do with serving chicken or being a quick service
exactly.
restaurant.
Yeah.
But if you see all their commercials, the red couch commercials, it's all about acts of kindness, doing good, taking care of people. And that's at the heart of what they do. Um, and this is intriguing to me. At the end of 2022, they closed just under $19 billion in gross revenue, and John, that was greater than their top five competitors combined.
Isn't that, I love that. I love it. And they're closed on Sunday.
Well, and from a practical standpoint, they do it with one third the number of retail outlets.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
think about that. Their top five competitors combined, one third the number of retail outlets, closed on Sunday. But because their mission is to be the world's most caring company, you see what happens. And I think people are beginning to wake up. There's a whole trend right now and research being done on the ROI of care and compassion. And I think it's profound because it's a simple idea, but it's so impactful that when you take care of people,
Yeah.
those people will take care of the business.
It's such a remarkable concept. Chick-fil-A is a great example of it working, but yet we still have many companies that work on the numbers, and they don't realize it's the people that gets the numbers. It's the people that get the culture. It's the people that, and so we work on try to work on the end result. We don't work on, the cause or what creates that. And I think but you're right. We are seeing more and more people talking about it. And it's so great to see a company like Chick-fil-A having the success they are, because they can point to their culture as being, one that is, again, consistent across all these stores all over the country too, and around the world. So that's what thing is amazing. They've been able to replicate that culture on a large scale.
Yeah, so it doesn't really matter if it's a small mom and pop operation around the corner, or if it's a regional organization, or if it's multinational. It's not the size, it's the heart that really matters.
Mm,
And I think that heart can permeate throughout the entire organization if you have a conscious awareness and you're constantly trying to keep your hand on the helm of culture.
I love that.
One of the things you brought up a great analogy and made me think. You're talking about being on a submarine,
Yeah.
and think about if you're not unified, if you don't enjoy those people, and you've got to be in such close quarters, for an extended period of time with those people, that's either going to be a really great experience or a really horrible experience. I'm a sailor. I love to sail. And we often take trips, catamarans, different places around the world. And most of this catamarans cats that I sail, there are 4 cabins, right? And so we'll invite 3 other couples to go with us. And part of what we talk about constantly is, would you sail with that couple?
Yes.
Do you
Yeah.
want to be on a small boat for a week with that individual? Do your values align? Do you believe the same thing? Do you enjoy each other's company? Because when you enjoy each other's company, the week passes so quickly and you want to do it
Yeah.
again. But I can tell you, and from experience, if you've only got one person on board that you're not in sync with, or that everybody else, doesn't really want to see them come up from their cabin, it's a long, long week. And the same thing applies in business and in
Yeah.
relationships.
Yeah.
There's no secret to it. It's just that we have to be consciously aware and concentrate on making it better.
I love that. Yeah. I always say that, like, on a submarine crew, there was a shared responsibilities, right? We shared responsibility. We also shared vulnerability, right? So, like, if anything happens, we all die, right? So I think there was a sense of, like, we need together to hold each other accountable to high performance, right? Because our lives matter. And it's the same thing. You're out on a sailboat. Everybody, has to pitch in, right? If they're not doing your job, right? If you can't
That's
trust somebody to have the watch at night, right? And you get off anchor and you're floating somewhere you're not supposed to be, that's bad, right? So you depend on others. And I think that's what we do in business. We depend on others. And I certainly learned that in my Navy days, for sure. I was going to ask you, in your book, Remarkable, you say a compelling culture has 3 characteristics. What are those 3 characteristics?
Well, we just call it the trilogy of a remarkable culture. And it's a place where people believe the best in one another. They want the best for one another.
Mm,
And so, therefore, they expect the best from one another. So, it starts off with trust. There has to be a high level of trust. Trust is foundational for any healthy relationship. And that's believing the best in each other. Where trust is high, resistance is low, and change
yes.
and progress can come quickly. But the converse is true. If trust is low, then resistance is always going to be high.
Yes.
So trust is the first part. But then the second part is care and compassion. We just talked about that. We want the best for each other. And so we lean into each other. We know each other's struggles. There's the vulnerability that you talked about. There's the openness, the transparency, the authenticity, the deep connection, and the deep relationships, because people thrive in relationally rich environments. And so that's the second piece. And then the third piece is accountability. And there's a
Mm,
lot of talk in the market about accountability, and we understand the need for that. And it certainly is very critical. But, John, if you try to have accountability before you have trust and
mm,
deep connection through compassion, then I can tell you, you're going to breed rebellion,
right.
because
Right.
people don't mind being held accountable when they know that you have their best interest at heart.
Yes.
But if they feel like you're trying to hold them accountable just to do something that they aren't inclined to do because their values are not aligned, or they're doing it just to make money for somebody else, or they're asked to compromise their values, whatever that may be, then it begins to unravel pretty quickly. So believing the best in each other, wanting the best for each other, and expecting the best from each other.
I love that. And I think where leaders step in is holding people accountable to when they're violating the culture, when they're going against what we have said or what we're trying to do in the culture. And I
Right.
think that our people, our high performers, expect us to hold people accountable who are not toeing the line and being part of the team, right? And so becomes disruptive. I talk about running to the fire. It becomes a fire if someone is doing something that is contrary to what we're trying to do in the company. And if we don't take action, if we allow that to kind of burn and smolder uncontrollable, it can affect the culture. So
No doubt.
our people expect us to step up when people aren't doing things consistent with the culture. And I imagine Chick-fil-A does that too, right? If you have managers or employees who are violating what they are trying to do with their company, they're not going to last very long with the company.
Well, no. And one of the things we teach and we really try to help organizations grow to become are organizations that are filled with continuous loops of feedback. In other words,
Mm.
you don't have to wait for the manager to swoop in and make things right if someone's out of sync. Everyone who should be around that individual, if we've got that commitment to one another, if we're truly a team, if we're truly united, then anybody who observes bad behavior or someone being out of
Yeah.
sync or a
Yeah.
fire, being ignited, whoever witnesses that should be the first one there, not waiting on the manager, not reporting to the
Yeah.
manager to run there, but there should be open loops of continuous feedback so that anybody at any time can talk to anybody about anything, anywhere throughout the organization, because organizations that have a strong culture and healthy relationships, then what happens, they become self-correcting and self-coaching.
Mm. Yes.
Those are the
Yes.
most powerful organizations you can find on the planet because they're always seeking to become better by challenging each other to bring your
Yes.
A game every single day. So people don't wait on someone else to respond. They step up because we're all in this together. We've got each other's backs.
Mm.
Because I believe in you, I'm also going to hold you accountable. And that's a fun dynamic. And that's when you have fluid play on the field or in the court or in the conference room. It's when you're all united in that way, seeking the best for each other.
I love that. I used to explain to people that's what the Navy on a submarine was called. I called it positive peer pressure. It was just like there was so much peer pressure to be excellent at what you did because you had the lives of your shipmates in your hands. And so there was a high level of positive peer pressure to be excellent at your job. And I love that. I love being held accountable to be great, and to be better than I was before. And when I went into corporate, I lost that. I just, there wasn't a sense of positive peer pressure. It was sort of like everybody kind of does their own thing and hope for the best. And I obviously I wasn't in good companies with really excellent cultures, so that's why I felt that missing. But I think a lot of veterans feel that way. They come out of the military. There's like a code of conduct, and we're going to do things excellent. And then you come out and you're like, what is going on? What are people doing? Why are we all leaving early? What is going on? It's so hard for me to accept it. And I know a lot of veterans too struggle with that. It's like we had principles, and then we come into some companies and there's no a commitment to excellence, right? And so yeah, I do understand what that is, and I think that makes a lot of sense. You talk about four principles of axiology. Now, not that familiar with that term, but these four principles of axiology and how they serve to help codify the culture. So, can you talk to us about what axiology is and how those principles can impact culture?
Yeah, that's a fun. We can do a deep dive there. Axiology is a strain of philosophy,
Okay.
and so it's the science of values, value constructs, and value judgments. And for me, it's the most, I think, beneficial explanation of human motivational behavior. Kind of alluded to it a little earlier when I said that people will do what they believe will bring the greatest value to themselves and others. We all act in accordance with our value construct because that impacts our thought processes, our decision making, and ultimately our performance. So axiology is a fascinating field of study because at its heart, what it is, it's an attempt to define and measure good.
Mm.
And it's also an attempt to create good, movements of good within organizational life. And we just talked about the ROI of care and compassion. Well, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about movements of good in organizational life. In other words, if you were to ask anybody, what's the purpose of business? 9 times out of 10, they're going to say to make money. And granted, if you don't make money, you're not going to be in business. But I don't think at the heart of it, that's the purpose of business. I think the purpose of business is to improve the human condition. I think the purpose of business is to make life better, to make a difference, to do good in the world. No matter what you do, if you make widgets or sell products, it doesn't that's that's not the real purpose. The purpose is to connect with people in such a way that you improve their life story.
Mm.
Because when you make a difference in people's lives, I guarantee you will make a dollar.
Mm.
No, but if an organization is all about just making money and that's all they're concerned about, it won't be too terribly long till they're exposed and people will begin to believe that they're only about making money.
Mm. Yeah.
But if you really strive to create value for people, here's what I know to be true, that people will gladly pay full price for those things that they deem bring true value to life,
Mm.
which is an interesting concept. Um, and it turns everything sort of on its head, because then you start asking better questions. Like, what are we here to do? Why are we here? What's the purpose of the organization? Um, and then you begin to sell not on the lowest price point, but you sell on the most value.
Mm.
And that makes a huge difference, because if you sell on the lowest price point, then you're constantly trying to eliminate costs so that you can, increase your margin to make a dollar. But the problem with that philosophy is that sooner or later you have to ask the question, how low can we lower our costs before our customers will no longer be satisfied with the level of service that we provide?
That's exactly it. Yeah.
And so, but when you sell on value, and the value you're going to create, people will gladly pay for that. I mean, I don't want to keep running back to Chick-fil-A. There are 1,000 other organizations that have the same philosophy, but they're not the cheapest chicken sandwich on the block,
Right.
right? But what you're going to get when you go in there to purchase lunch is you're going to get a clean bathroom. You're going to get a friendly face. They're going to call you by name. You're going to get a high quality product. It's going to be consistent. Your orders are going to be right, and they're going to be friendly. And
Yeah.
and you don't mind paying a little extra for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
It's interesting because we started our company 8 years ago, and we thought we would sell. So we make products for electric utilities. So there's 3,500 electric utilities around the country, and so some are big, some are medium, some are small. And we thought we'd sell to them all. What we found is the big utilities have armies of purchasing managers who want the lowest price for everything. And they didn't see the value in our small companies, our speed, how quickly we ship our products, how we're there to provide technical support, how we answer the phone the first ring. We get our request for quotes returned in 24 hours. They didn't see the value in what we were doing. So they just wanted the lowest price. And we found ourselves gravitating towards customers that did see our value. And so we didn't originally plan it when we started our company, but we supply the small and medium utilities, and we're happy to do it because they see the value in our company, and they're willing to pay for that because we treat them like a person, not a number like the big companies do. So so I think part of leadership is also, is to find those customers that are willing to pay the value, create that value, and then find the customers that love who you are in providing that value.
That's right. That's exactly right. Because those are the ones that really understand your mission, what you're there to do, and they're the
Yeah.
ones to be long-term partners. Because
Right.
that way, another supplier who comes in and undercuts you by 10 cents, it's not going to make any difference because you've developed that long-term relationship. So
Exactly. And so those long-term customers that we've had, they don't care. We don't talk about price. We talk about delivery and when are you going to get a new rating or a new feature. We're talking about the future. We don't talk about price ever. But
that's right.
the big guys that, with the armies of purchasing guys, they want the lowest price. And it's like, well, we can give you a price, but it may not be the lowest, and I love that with your Chick-fil-A example too, is it's not the cheapest chicken sandwich, but it's one that you're going to find a clean bathroom. You're going to get a friendly, someone behind the counter that's going to be friendly. So you get a consistent service. You get something that is valuable to you. Yeah, absolutely. I love that. One of the things that someone I had guests on the show, and I've done some reading on as well, that they say culture is almost like a religion. Once it becomes embedded in an organization, it's hard to change. How can leaders change a culture? So if you say you come into an organization and the culture is kind of toxic or it's problematic, and you want to create this powerful culture like you talk about, how do you even go about beginning to change a culture and influence a culture?
Yeah. Well, I think these principles from the field of axiology are extremely impactful.
Mm.
And axiology as a science, it talks about the structure of value.
Mm.
And what is valuable? How can we create more value? And uh, we have 7 principles that we espouse and we teach to organizations, and we help them begin to embed within the fabric of the organization. But just a couple of those, just very simply, The first one is viability. Every life has a purpose. So what's the purpose? What's the purpose of not only the individuals, what's the purpose of the organization? And I think everything worth its salt has to have a very clearly defined purpose, a purpose statement. Organizations have that. When I ask leaders or individuals, what's your purpose, your life purpose statement, or your leadership legacy statement? I get a lot of blank stares. But that's where you got to begin. What's your purpose for being here? And then there's the principle of creativity, which means that just simply says that we're all designed to create value in life. And so we talk about the fact that in life, there are two kinds of people. There are value creators and there are value extractors.
Yep.
And it's not just as easy as givers and takers. Some people like to put it in a simple bucket like that. It gets a little bit more complicated, but value creators are people who live with an abundance mentality that says, hey, if we all bring more to the table than we take away, then at the end of the day, there will be a surplus on the table that can be shared by everybody who helped to create that value. But a value extractor, on the other hand, has a scarcity mentality. They believe there's not enough to go around. So therefore, I've got to get to the table and get as much for myself as I possibly can if I want to survive. The problem with that mentality is if everybody is a value extractor and they rush to the table to get as much as they can for themselves, it won't be too terribly long till there's nothing left on the table. And when there's nothing left on the table, the game is over, go home, right?
Yeah.
And so you have value creators and we're all designed to be value creators. The problem with that is that sometimes, that's how we're hardwired, but our software is broken. And so we have to talk about how do we become value creators and how do we adjust our mindset to bring more to the table than we take away. But that's the principle, or we call the maxim of creativity. But then there's also the maximum of positivity. There's 7 of them, and I won't go into all of them, but this is a good one maybe to wrap things up on. And I love this one because it's so powerful. But it's the maximum of positivity. And it just simply says that all the good things you want in life are a byproduct of creating value for other people. Now, here's everybody wants to be happy. But John Templeton, a very wise man, said, happiness pursued eludes, but happiness given returns. In other words, I'm the happiest as a husband. Guess what? When my wife is happy.
Yeah.
I'm the happiest as a parent when my kids are happy. I'm the happiest as a leader when my team members are happy. Everybody pursues happiness, but they don't really know how, because oftentimes we think if I just reach this milestone, if I just acquire that thing, I'll be happy. And it never brings long-term happiness. Happiness is the result of healthy relationships. And that's where many people miss it. Happiness is the result of healthy relationships. So what are you doing to create a relationally rich environment? And that's the principle of positivity. It's like, you remember old Zig Ziglar, who used to say, the fastest way to success is to make those around you successful. Same idea. Yeah. All the good things you want in life are a byproduct of doing good for others. So therefore, how do we create movements of good within organizational life? So those are just a few principles from the field of axiology. But as you unpack those principles and all the other principles and practices that go along with it, it's amazing the impact it can have on organizational life.
I love that. I love that. I was trying to describe what our business is like to someone. I was on a podcast earlier today as a guest, and I was talking about how we had one of our employees. We do a stand-up meeting every morning, and we had one of our employees. This was 3 years ago. She was well-loved employee, been there since the beginning. She announced that she was pregnant with her first baby, and everyone was excited. And I looked around at the team, and everybody was crying, and I was like, well, this is a weird business experience, right? And it was almost like, we care so much for each other, right? That team cares so much for each other. When someone has that really exciting, great moment in life, we all felt it. Like we all felt it. And then, fast forward 3 years later, the other day, she didn't have her mom was having an operation, so she had to bring her daughter in, and her daughter was on a tricycle running through the factory, and there was her daughter, who we were 3 years ago crying about. She's 3 years old now, running around on her tricycle in our factory, and I'm like, this, we're living life together. We have built these deep relationships. We deeply care for each other, and it's something that I never experienced in my corporate days, and I love being part of a team that is like this now, because I feel like there's nothing that come against this organization that we built, just because we are such a close-knit organization, a close-knit team.
Well, and I think that's it. You touched on it. And a good culture is doing life together.
Yeah.
You know, raising up leaders worth following. And I know that's a good phrase for you, as it is
Yeah.
for me. But
Yeah.
when people are connected, and you create a relationally rich environment of respect and accountability and just deep compassion for one another, that's powerful, because we all want to be connected in a sense of community. I mean, I think that's the way every human being is wired. There's just something within us. I think God made it that way, that we have to be connected with one another to be fulfilled. And I think in a world right now that's so torn apart by disagreement and cancel culture and shutting each other down and shutting each other out and arguing and fighting, the thing we really need is to coalesce and come together. And even if we don't agree on everything, just to say, hey, couldn't we at least do this together? Isn't this something productive that we could see happen if we just joined our forces together to do good? And I think that is a flywheel that if you get that started within organizational life, people will be so drawn and gravitate toward that it literally becomes unstoppable. And that's what we're talking about, creating an unstoppable culture by doing life together, and really, coming to a place that we sharpen and challenge each other every single day.
I absolutely love that. This has been fantastic, Randy. So what are you working on these days? We talked a little bit about it before we press record. You've got some exciting things. You got a new book coming out, and then also you've got some exciting stuff about the way you're doing teaching, and I'm interested in hearing that.
Well, one of our first books, a remarkable, just the third edition, just came out in April. We're really excited about that, and it's doing very well. And it unpacks a lot of these principles and ideas that we're talking about. I wrote a new book called Make Life Good. The full title is You've Made a Good Living. Now Make Life Good.
I love it.
And so it's about, how do you find a purpose and meaning in life that goes beyond just making money or, retiring comfortably? How can you give back to make your own dent in the universe? And it's a fun parable, an inspirational, soul stirring parable about how we can each in our own way make a difference in the world. But then we've taken all of our content, we put it on a digital platform, which I'm really excited about. Finally found a partner that we're thrilled with that can now we can disseminate our content globally. And what you and I were talking about before we came on is for the first time, I have created a digital twin using AI, and we can deliver our digital content in 53 languages.
I love this. I
At the
love
drop
this.
of a hat. And it's crazy scary, because you wouldn't know it's not me. I mean, that's how far technology has come. It's pretty seamless and smooth, and it's a whole lot of fun. We're playing with that right now.
Wow, that's exciting. So yeah, now I wonder if in the future I'm going to be interviewing AI twins and
You
not
might. You
and not
very
the
well
actual
may be.
person. I
It's coming.
love I love it. Well, I just think one of the things that's really neat about it is the idea that you can take this content and put it in all these different languages, because I think, if you probably, I don't know the statistics, but if you probably look the number of leadership books written, there's probably more in English than anything else. But yet these things are essential around the globe. I mean, I work with global teams my whole career, right? And so these principles are just as important in other languages. And so I love the idea that we can take and use AI as a tool to help teach these important lessons in other languages. That's really, really interesting.
Yeah. So if we work with some multinational groups, but who have their workforce is globally dispersed, and now we can deliver the content in whatever language they need for it to be delivered in. It's really a step up. We're excited about the capability.
That's very cool. That's very cool. Well, what final message would you like to leave with our listeners today?
Oh man, here's a quote from my book Fireproof Happiness. Might be a good place to end, and it just simply says this: that joy is the emotional result of hope.
Hmm.
Peace is the emotional result of faith, and love is the expression of them both.
I love that.
Yeah. So faith, hope, and love. Eternal trilogy, powerful, impacts every human relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. These are the timeless facts. Yeah, and it's
Timeless
interesting because
truths.
what's interesting is I've, on this podcast, and the listeners know, I've interviewed all sorts of people, a lot of military people. But one thing is consistent against three different Navy SEAL commanders that I interviewed is that the word love came up in that discussion. And so you think of Navy SEALs as being these tough guys and, battle hardened, and, all of them had combat experience. But they talk about love, the love of the person next to them, and why they do what they do, and that brotherhood. And it's always interesting because of all the people I talk to, the toughest men were the ones talking about love and the importance of love.
Now, it is interesting, and we talked about that earlier when it came to culture. It's not just a matter of having that relationship with your superior, but when you're fighting in the foxhole, when you're on a submarine together, it's the guy next to you,
Yeah.
right? It's your colleague. It's the person you've got to be taking care of each other and looking out for each other. And that's where really you see organizations begin to shine. It's when those relationships are healthy and they're productive and people just enjoy working together.
Such, this is such a great points you bring up, Randy. Thank you for coming on the show. This has been fantastic. You've got a lot of books out there. So how can our listeners learn about you, your books, and your company?
Quite simply, wherever fine books are sold, you can find our books, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, BAM, wherever. If you're interested in what we do, and I travel the country and do keynotes, and I go into organizations and do workshops, and we also have our digital content that if people are interested, they can gain access to that. But we explain all that on our website at drrandyross.com. That's just DR, no period, randyross.com. If they want to reach out to me personally, they can do that at rr@drrandyross.com.
Fantastic. We're going to put links in the show notes for all of Randy's resources and his books. And again, if something really resonated from you, if culture, the discussion on culture or axiology or something really resonated, reach out to Randy and ask him a question. He is the expert. I'm honored to have him on the show, but he's available if you've got questions. If you're looking for a keynote, if you're looking to have someone come out and maybe do some fixing to your corporate culture, and believe me, you probably have problems in your culture, and he's going to be the person to call to be able to fix that. He is a doctor of culture. He can fix your culture
Yeah.
and help you get better in your organization. Randy, thanks for coming on the show, and thank you for sharing all of this insight and giving us a really good perspective of how to make our businesses better.
John, it's been a pleasure. I've enjoyed the conversation and grateful for the invitation to join you today.
Well, thank you again. Well, that's it for today. Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and share so we can continue to build a world with better bosses. Until next time, this is John Rennie saying take care and lead well.